Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Topbin90 Podcast. We are back in the studio. We've got my main man, Brian Maurer, Bam Maurer Media. How are you today?
Doing well, man.
Bro, you dressed up. You're looking sharp today, man, now that you're officially in Charlotte, right?
Yeah, man. Well, and I felt like I should come ready to do, talk business after, Charlotte wasn't able to take care of business. So.
Yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth. And we've got a very special guest today. You guys may know him online as Britton, XG Britton. My man, how are you today?
Good. It's weird being in Charlotte on a weekday because I'm up north, but good.
Nice, man. So I guess for the people that don't really know you, tell us maybe a little bit about your background.
You want the whole background, or
I want to know
recent?
the time that you were born,
all the way
what
back
the
to
weather
zero.
was like.
I think it was a Sunday, a little rainy. No. So content stuff. Basically, I started doing content 2018, but it was video game based. And then I think maybe January of last year, I just transitioned into MLS because I've always been soccer.
Nice.
And then Charlotte, I kind of gave them like a year of, do I really want to step into this in like the content world, or just kind of step back as a fan because it might be a little sketchy for a while? But I gave him a year, and then I started doing it. So
nice. Yeah, I think the first time, I think I officially met you was I interviewed you because I was like, he kind of looks like Ben Bender a little bit. So.
Yes, but his hair's cut right now, right?
Yeah, it is.
But mine's getting cut tomorrow, so
Nice.
it's going back on that like circular nonsense.
Nice. What made you want to start creating content just in general? I mean, because you do a great job, man. I mean, like,
thank you.
That's one of the reasons that I kind of reached out to you, and I was like, hey, you know what? We can benefit from just how well you put out content, and you can kind of like become more known through us,
Right.
although you already had a big base of people that followed you.
Yeah, but it's different, right? Because like I did like the giant MLS realm where it's like
Right.
every single team, every single place, and I don't think I really did anything Charlotte related until I kind of was like, I need to figure out how to actually break into that. So it's been kind of a nice thing. But content in general, I used to do like beer installation back in like from 2014 to 2022, and I had a work accident in 2018, and then I couldn't walk for like 4 months.
Okay.
And so at that point I was like, well, I'm playing video games. I love video games. I can't do anything else right now because I can't really walk. I can't go anywhere. So let's just see if we can make a little bit of a side income doing it that way. So then it just kind of took off from there.
That's awesome, bro. What would you say you enjoy most about just creating content?
It's kind of strange because it's like the video game side and then the MLS side is completely different when it comes to that. Like video game stuff, everything's always rotating. There's always new games. There's always new things that are happening, updates left and right, new things coming out, new developing companies, I guess, right? Whereas MLS, it's different because it's like you're kind of on a journey with a team. You're kind of following that that progressiveness, and you can do it with the fan base as well, which is kind of one thing that I really like about the Charlotte and getting in it kind of early is like you're there for the first year and you can kind of watch it grow, and then you jump in the second year, and then you can kind of like be a part of that growth. So that's what's really been pretty fun for me so far.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me.
I just want to make sure, people have a little bit more context on you, so awesome. So here's some of the topics that we're going to discuss today. Obviously that L in New York, we'll recap that, Also, the next 30 days, Charlotte has 7 matches, 4 of them which are home games. So we're going to talk a little bit about how important that home stretch is for Charlotte and their playoff aspirations. Also, I want to discuss the best midfield pairings right now because we've seen some rotation in there from Dean Smith. Also, maybe we'll talk a little bit about what players haven't featured that could help the team right now. Maybe some players that, in my opinion, I have one that comes to mind that I think could use some minutes and could potentially do something well for us. Also, I got to talk about this today because it annoyed me to a degree. The San Diego is close to signing Chucky Lozano. What an absolute monster of a signing that would be for them. Anyways, and then we'll touch a little bit on the Portland preview as well. So let's get it right into it. New York City FC, Charlotte, a team that we have been used to winning against, right? We finally lost to, right? So I feel like it got flipped this year where, we lost our 2 home openers last year and the year before that, but we continued that stretch with NYCFC, and now we kind of get rid of that positive record against them. And in typical Charlotte FC, they've got Fergie time. Now we've got Charlotte FC time, right? Where, you know, like I thought we were kind of over this where, you know, we could see out a game or take a tie and go home, but apparently not, you know. We're starting to see those ghosts from the past. So I guess I'll start off with you, Brian. Talk to me about that game you saw against NYCFC.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they started bright, right? I mean, they came right out. And I feel like we've seen that multiple times this year where they've come out real sharp, pressing, getting a couple early chances, and scoring. And I mean, which we saw again this, you know, on Saturday. The issue was, I feel like, I mean, we've seen them fade in the second half several times, but it seemed like they really faded early in this one.
Yeah, like after 15 minutes.
Right? And then, like, so that whole, like, second half, the second portion of the first half was, like, just all New York.
Yeah.
It felt like they were just getting really bombarded. Kalina had to make, like, I feel like at least 3 or 4 big saves at the end of that first half. Eventually, I mean, you couldn't keep the clean sheet there, so then it was 1-1. At the half. I do feel like...
Which, just to interrupt you real quickly, I mean, set pieces I thought was something that we were improving on. But obviously, these last couple of games, you know, I've been very terrified anytime another team gets a set piece. But continue, my bad.
No, I think also Milanda and Byrne coming back, we thought maybe the defense would kind of reset a little bit. Defense did not seem reset at all. It seems like overall, since the beginning of the year, they've kind of regressed to the mean in terms of just... Maybe they're not as good as we maybe, or the compactness wasn't there as much as we hoped, you know? So I think there's some room for improvement on the defensive side. Second half, it seemed like maybe some of those adjustments were made. New York didn't have as many chances, but I still felt like Charlotte wasn't really completely in the game. It seemed like there's large stretches of the entire game where we were like just really trying to hang on and just really like let's just get out of here with the point. Let's get out of here with the point, which against New York we haven't really seen. In the past, but New York does seem like this year for me improved compared to the last couple of seasons, so that also plays a role.
How much of an impact do you guys think there really was with playing on a pitch like a baseball pitch, where, you know, it's kind of slightly different? I mean, we really can't judge too much because we play on an NFL stadium as well, right? So
I feel like we've done this before, right? They've done it before.
That's
Most
fair,
of those guys have played there before, so I don't know if it makes that big of an impact for Charlotte specifically. I mean, I guess maybe just because it's once a year. New York does that 17 times a year, so it's a huge advantage for them. And I think over the years they've shown that their home record is really, really impressive. So,
I do think it kind of plays into it, especially with Charlotte being more of a out wide, direct on the sides, and then kind of throwing it in. When you have basically, I think they're 70 yards is the minimum, and they are the minimum, as well as not just width but length. They're 110, which is also the minimum. So it plays a big impact, especially when New York is kind of more of a through the midfield, especially with Santi. So it's like, I think it definitely plays into it. And New York's been there. I think this was their 4th home game in a row. Yep. So they're really in their groove with this field. So especially Charlotte, like they are in an NFL stadium, but it is. I think Charlotte's field is the maximum for FIFA, which I don't know. I couldn't find the exact numbers on those last night, but I want to say they are we either at the maximum or right underneath it. So I think it does a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously, to be fair too, like if you're gonna use whatever advantage you have at home, right? Mm-hmm. So if for them it's a baseball stadium, let it be that till they get their massive stadium that should be coming in a couple of years as well, which will be cool for the league, right? I mean, Britton, talk to me specifically about this game. It's felt like this game to me has felt like the season, kind of starting on a high. Right, with a win and then a tie away, right? And it just kind of it's been going downhill for Charlotte FC. And this match kind of reminded me of that. You know, we were trying Petkovic at the 10 because we still can't find a creative attacking midfielder, right? You know, Kerwin scores early on. It looks like, okay, the team is starting bright, right? And like Brian said, after 15 minutes, I just felt like we started to disappear.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that 10, which I try to make the kind of correlation between the 10 and like a point guard or a QB. So it's kind of hard for a wide receiver to score a touchdown if they don't have a quarterback. It's hard for, let's say, a center to dribble down the field or down the court and not get a turnover, right? So it's not the exact same thing, but it is a very key point that Charlotte doesn't have. I did think there was one really good moment that ended up not turning into anything because Leo Lovato missed the shot. I think he would make that shot 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah, that's welcome to Charlotte.
Right.
Mr. 1v1
Exactly. It's just what's going to happen. Yeah, right? So there was where Enzo kind of, the ball was turned over to Enzo to Petkovic. Petkovic, one touch, right? It was just boom, boom, boom. And that's the kind of thing that we're missing a lot of right now. So I think that 10 role is huge. And Petkovic, whether he's the one or not, I don't know yet.
He showed, some decent IQ. That play specifically stands out in just terms of like processing speed, being able to see the pass develop and make
because it was one touch.
Yeah. So he knew it was coming. He knew where to go quickly, which is, again, that's the other part of what we're missing is just speed overall in that area going into the attacking third. But my one concern with him specifically was that Dean mentioned that he almost seemed like Dean was ready to take him out of the 60 minutes in the post match when he was talking about like, I knew he was going to be tired. Like it almost was the way he addressed it. It was like, for me, that's kind of concerning just in terms of like, how are you at 60 minutes? We're 10 weeks in. Like we need, and he's like 22.
Right. He should be fit.
He should be fit. Westwood's out there at 34 and he's running miles, right? Like serious miles.
And didn't he mention that his best position is a box-to-box midfield? Don't you need energy for that?
Yeah, for sure. So that's one concern I have with him is just we got to see that energy for far longer because I saw some really bright moments, but like for 15 minutes we need way more than that.
For sure. Also, how concerning does it become, right? Enzo Copetti still hasn't gotten on the score sheets. Daniel Rios, who hasn't even been here all season, signed with Atlanta and already has a goal, right? So, there's clear deficiencies in this. I feel like it just becomes repetitive now. Hey, we need a top scoring 9 and we need a center attacking midfielder. We're 3 years in and I feel like these are two crucial positions that we still have not found an answer for.
Yeah, Sam has stopped being willing to write Enzo in as a stock down at this point. He literally said it we're done talking about it until he scores a goal. And I think that's really kind of where a lot, even this last week, people started bringing up videos of look the way he engaged both the center backs on the goal. It's just we keep having to find all these random different. It's okay. How far advanced analytics are we going to take it to the point where it's at some point it's just you got to get goals as a team.
Right. I continue to use there's just things he does that's not on the score sheet, or there's things he does that you can't write in the stats, and it's okay.
Yeah, at some point, you have to start scoring goals. I do agree we don't create enough, but as a striker, you still have to find a way. Patrick Ajimang has found a way to put 2 goals in his tally this season. Swiderski last year found a way, even though he wasn't the 9 all the time, found a way to score goals. And to me, that's important too. And I gotta say, I think this has become internal pressure for him as well. So we don't know how that affects him because he's got 5-6 MLS goals at best, So from an attacking threat point, that's very, very concerning for me because we've spent heavy money on a DP striker in him and he hasn't produced. And we spent good money on bringing Kamil Yazviak last for the inaugural season and he hasn't produced. So to me now, right, it's still too early to tell what Leo Lovato will actually do here. But these key positions continue to strike me as the front office is hit or miss with the most important pieces that we need.
Right, yeah. Go ahead.
I think one other point about this, I think this game really felt like it was as a downer. This result is fine if you don't get beat 3-0 at home the week before.
It's a double gut punch.
That's the biggest thing is just for me is if you don't get beat 3-0 and you come away with at least a point or all 3 in your home game, then it's we lost a point on the road. But at the same end of the day, you got to just try to scrape through the road games and try to find some points occasionally across the course of the season. You just can't get beat like that at home. And so when that happens, and then on top of that, you drop the point, on the road the week after, that's for me is where it starts to really add up a little bit.
And also, is the way of the loss to the team didn't feel You just like you said, like everybody looked a little lethargic. Like after those first 15 minutes, I'm like, what happened to the team, right? And like Britton mentioned, like if we can't create through the wings, we get found out really, really quickly. A one-dimensional team that has no options to create through the middle, you know? And so we're getting found out very, very quickly. And unfortunately, Dean doesn't have the options to, you know, actually make some substantial changes, right? I mean, Diagade has been benched, right? Yep. And the only reason he started a week ago was because Scott Arfield was injured, right? So that position continues to be a problem for us. And, you know, like this coming into this weekend, a guy that's semi on form, quote unquote, in Kerwin Vargas won't even be available.
Right.
Yeah. And then we also didn't touch on the fact that he started Urso over Diani.
Yeah.
I think that's another worthwhile point to bring up. I'm curious as to kind of how Dean approaches both the press conference this week and then this weekend's game in terms of who he picks over there, because it did seem like Diani, especially as they were continuing to struggle maintaining possession and progressing the ball, Diani seemed like the ideal player in that spot, whereas it seemed like the reason you give Urso the start is to kind of be a little bit more aggressive on the defensive side, win a lot of the duels defensively, which is what he did. I mean, that's what you're going to have Urso go out there to be, but it seemed like they were missing something from that deeper lying spot, progressing the ball forward, which is what Diani and Westwood together had been doing so well.
Nice. Yeah, well, and then you've got Urso's on a yellow, and so he's that aggressive defensive player, and so I wouldn't say he was starting to lose his head a little bit, but there were moments where he kind of like, you're like, okay, you need to back up or you're going to get this a second yellow. Yeah. So it's like at that point you need the forward movement. You've got a defensive aggressive midfielder who's on a yellow. Why not bring Diani in? Especially because Diani's been consistently, in my opinion, a fairly high-rated player each game.
Yeah. So, I mean, up until the point that I bigged him up, he was doing well.
Right.
Then after that, too...
We had this segment on, is he the player of the year?
Yeah.
And then immediately got benched.
The Topbin curse strikes again. We were bigging up Abada too. Then he goes and misses that 1v1. I'm sorry, guys. Never again on this podcast.
Only down takes.
We're just going to start talking about the Timbers the rest of the episode.
For real. Well, continuing then, let's talk about, from May 4th to June 2nd, which is a span of about 30 days, Charlotte plays 7 games, 4 of them being at home. And we've touched about how bad the record's been away, where we haven't won an actual match. So I want to talk to you guys about just the importance of these 7 games, specifically with 4 of them being at home. If we're gonna look at competing and being in a playoff spot, because this is what we were told. The changes that were made for this season were because 9th wasn't good enough, because last season wasn't good enough, right? So to finish 9th again, which in my opinion we're going to do again, isn't good enough based on what the front office says, right? So how crucial do these 4 home games become? And I'll start off with you, Britt.
I'll break it down into 2 different spots. So the first 3 are must. They're a must because you've got Portland, who's not incredibly hot right now, especially on the defensive end. You've got Nashville, who's all over the place, and then you've got Chicago, who's right below us in the standings. After that, it's who is it? Is it
Galaxy?
It's Galaxy, Philadelphia, Red Bulls, Atlanta. So I'll throw Atlanta in there as well. But those are going to be the tougher ones. So you have to get those 3 regardless.
I think the other point to mention, there's a bunch of these teams are like really poor defensively. You got Portland, who Portland games are crazy. They're averaging the total goals in their games is like 4 goals per game right now. They have allowed at least 2 goals in like 6 consecutive games, and they haven't won in 7. Right, so to go back to like their poor form as well. But LA Galaxy give up a ton of goals. Nashville have been giving up a bunch of goals. Chicago give up a decent amount of goals. A lot of these teams are struggling defensively. So if there was also a stretch just to figure out things on the offensive end for Charlotte, this is the time to do it. Like we're talking about like lack of creation, lack of finishing. These teams are giving up tons of shots and tons of goals. Like, you got to get it done on the offensive end to build up some momentum for your attackers in this stretch, just because, like, if they don't get it, I mean, you're never going to find a more favorable stretch in your season than right now.
Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, also, like, to play into a fact, outside of that Minnesota game, we've been very, very strong at home, right? So to try to pull at 12, minimum 10 points out of these 4 games becomes very crucial for me in terms of Charlotte actually fighting for those that 5th, 6th, maybe 7th position. Which, I mean, I think the thing that we saw last year under Lattanzio was that there were these moments where Charlotte could go and, build off of what they did, and it never happened. And it felt like that again, specifically the last 2 games where a result against Minnesota, a win, would have put us in 4th, 5th, right? Again, like now we're looking at the table and we're 11th now, right? So again, this stretch now gives this team a perfect opportunity to bounce back. Like you mentioned, it gives Enzo a perfect opportunity to start scoring some goals. Yep. It gives Charlotte FC a perfect opportunity to start racking up some goals. Like, we need a 3-0, 4-0 victory, like a moral victory, So obviously some of these games, if we could just get away with the result, I'm happy with that, right? Yep. Based on what we have, who's in and around us, and I think that's important, right? So 10 out of 12 points minimum. And then the away games, that's where I'm like, bro, if you're asking me to bet on Charlotte FC winning an away game, I'm not betting
right
at all.
No, I mean, they're gone on there. I mean, I posted this right after the game, and Eric Krakauer mentioned it on the podcast, on the broadcast as well. I mean, but they've lost 4 straight for the first time on the road since their first 4 ever road games. So this is the first time they've gone on a streak like this. And so, I mean, you just can't bet on them on the road. They got to get, they got to get 12 out of this stretch minimum. And so that's the four home games. Mm-hmm. Reason for that, so if you get through these 7 games, you're halfway through the season. That would put you at 23 points. That's still really, honestly, not at the level you would want. That's not that much of an improvement. That's 3 points throughout the course of the season compared to last year. So it's not a huge improvement. And the schedule does get, significantly tougher. I showed you that. I texted this to you. Their stretch of games leading up to the Leagues Cup break is insane. The only home game is Miami, and then they have 5 road games, including
who's top of the league right now, by the way.
Yeah. Columbus on the road, Cincinnati on the road, Philadelphia on the road, and there's one more.
Austin, who's also cooking right now.
Yeah, they're starting to cook, right? So the only home game is Miami. I mean, that stretch is insanely tough. So that's 5 of 6, and that's how you close out. So if you don't take care of business now, you just gotta take care of your tap-ins, right? And then you don't have to shoot Hail Marys and long shots. And if you don't take care of business now, you got to deal with that long shot to try to just stay in the race. I think if they don't take care of it now, they could be. It could be really hard to get back into it at that stretch, because then at Leagues Cup, that's like 23, 24 games. I mean, you're behind the ball.
Yeah, but you know what? What really annoys me about MLS too is just how poor and mediocre the standards are to make playoffs. Yep. 7 teams make playoffs, and then you got 2 teams that make a play-in out of 14, mm-hmm. right? So I think that doesn't help Charlotte FC, to be honest with you, because we're gonna sit here and complain and moan about the same things that we do, but the reality is we could lose the next 6 games and still have an opportunity to make a playoff.
Right.
Montreal, I keep saying it, last year had like 17 losses, and we're 2 minutes away from making a play-in game. So this to me breeds complacency in how we build this squad, because there's no true pressure through the whole season, right? I mean, like you mentioned, Austin is having a positive, but that's because they've won the last 3 games, right? So it takes 3 wins on the bounce for you to actually be back in it, and to me, that has to change. There has to be some improvement in terms of creating more competitiveness with this team for there to actually be real pressure, because you could always say, well, we're 3 points behind, or, well, we're right in it, And so that to me, is something that I see that doesn't help us. It doesn't, there's no true pressure. If you're not feeling that pressure, and Zlatan mentioned it a couple of years ago, right? Although the league has come a long way from that time. But to me, that's still something that they need to improve. I know they got this new deal with Apple, but they have to figure out ways to continue to increase the competitiveness of this league, because if not, we're going to stay in this complacency.
I think the fans can provide that kind of pressure at least a little bit, because I do think overall the fans want to see an improvement in Charlotte for this team. And I think this stretch of games gives them the opportunity, if they take advantage of it, to actually solidify themselves as a potential playoff contender. Not meaning like one of the top teams, because I think that's a really far stretch given some of the top teams in the East right now. But it could give them an opportunity to solidify themselves as like a 6th or 7th place team if they actually take care of business.
Right.
So that's really what it comes down to. They've never done that. We've never seen Charlotte do that in the favorable stretches of their schedule. They always end up having to be in a spot where, like, okay, now we got to try to find a way to get a result in Philadelphia. We got to figure out a result to get it, in New York or in Miami, right? So all these different stretches where it's just like, how do we have to get the points now when we could have taken care of business in Montreal or, all these other stretches. So I think that's the other big factor is just like, can you actually take care of business when it's your time to do it? And I think this is their time.
A sense that I'm getting, that I'm starting to feel that could be very dangerous for Charlotte FC is some fans are transitioning from angry to not caring. And, to get angry is still a good sign, because that means you care, right? That you still want to see this team do well. But when you're transitioning to not caring, that's a big problem.
That's passion. Then you're losing the passion.
You're losing the people that are in it and out, because they're tired of seeing the same thing. They're tired of us talking about the same issues year after year. Yeah. So that's just something that I was like, oh, like that. I'm starting to see a couple of people turn from where, like, you know what, this was fun, but like there's never actually any true progression in this team.
Right. You've also got like a lot of people saying, just wait till we have a 10, and that's going to be the summer. So a lot of people are kind of like putting everything on the back burner. Yeah. And with what you said, you kind of have to get those games now. So you can't wait till you have a 10, because 100%. It might not work out. That 10, we don't
even have
DPs?
A track record of showing that we're going to find a quality 10.
Right. So you can't really bet on any kind of signing that's going to happen. You have to get what you need to get done now, and not wait until whatever may happen. So you've got people just kind of like sitting and waiting, and that passion I think kind of falls with that.
When people are hyped that Ben could potentially play the 10 role, that's a problem. No disrespect to Ben, right? He's still a young kid, and he may do well in that position, but that's not a long-term solution.
No.
Dean's going to try him out based on his skill sets that he believes he can possess in that role. There's no guarantee that he's going to come in and be some sort of savior for this team.
No,
I think he will. I mean, he won't be the creator. He'll be able to finish. Like, he's proven that he can contribute to goals.
For sure.
That is also lacking with this team right now. So I think just that fact alone, that he's shown that he is able to like step in and contribute a goal here and there, I think it would be an improvement based on what they have. But I mean, he won't create like a ton of chance. I mean, that's just not really in his game. Like, his game is receiving the ball and kind of making something happen in the final third, but it's never been pulling the strings.
Right, he doesn't create. He kind of like just assists with it. And I do think he potentially could be the best bet we have with our current squad at that 10 role.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But that's not really saying a lot at the moment. But
but I mean, you've got guys like Brecht on $1 million. We paid millions for Petkovic, right? For us to say that a college draft pick can come in and be that's a problem.
That's a problem.
That's a problem with your roster build.
Yeah, and I think going back to what we said earlier about Petkovic, I think he could. There have been glimpses every time he's played of things that you could see and be like, this could potentially be what we need here, but do we wait around?
Yeah, just to me is like, that's not what he was brought in here for.
Right.
And he's mentioned it himself that he's the box-to-box 8, right? So like expecting something from a guy that's not his true position, right, is more of a gamble. It could potentially work, but to me, there's more downside right now than there is upside. Speaking of that midfield, let's talk a little bit about the best midfield pairing that Charlotte could provide right now. Obviously, we've seen the home game against Minnesota. Brant Bronico came in. Urso started this week, and Diani, hasn't featured as much lately, right? So what would you guys say is Charlotte FC's best midfield pairing right now? Their best 3, right?
Best 3. Well, I don't think we know what their best 3. Like, if you just look at the pairing, like the double pivot, I think we know what that best pairing is. I think it's Diani and Westwood.
Ashley,
and the one concern I have when Dean mentioned this after the Minnesota game, when he said the reason he took Diani out was that he made all those runs in the first half, like
space,
box to box. What's strange to me is that he would then not start him the next game, because I feel like, okay, maybe you just thought he was low on energy, so you don't, you give him an early substitution and you just take him out for the game. But then him not starting him made it seem to me that maybe he's actually has a concern with Diani not following his instructions.
Right.
Yeah.
Because but he didn't make it sound like that in the presser. So he made it sound like it was an energy thing. But if he didn't start him the next game, that makes me think it might have been a tactical thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other reason do you have?
Yeah.
Well, we saw that early on too with Yuri kind of like disappearing for a while, where he was saying he was drifting more centrally when he wanted him more out wide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So it might be one of those things like you've mentioned, right, where like he's maybe not, I don't want to say listening, but not doing what Dean Smith is asking of him from his role.
Yeah, so that would be my one concern there. But other than that, I mean, I feel like what Diani and Westwood have shown before this last couple of games was, the most promising duo just in terms of progression. Diani can do some pretty special things with the ball at his feet.
Yeah.
He's also in his prime. I think there is a concern. They'll say age is just a number and all this stuff, right? But I really do think that if you start two guys in their mid 30s, we're talking with Urso and Westwood week in and week out. That's a big ask. Westwood has played every minute and he's run a ton of miles. More miles than anybody on the team. So I think doing that to your double pivot is also a big ask there in your mid 30s. I know the players will fight me on that all day, but you can just see it.
Yeah. Plus throw in the traveling leagues cup. At some point, right? You need those fresh young legs.
Yeah, I think Westwood's probably fine in that role, but having both of them be that agent, especially if you bring in Brecht and then or Scotty, you've got all three of them being late 30s, mid to late 30s. So it's you can't really go that. One, I think this is kind of a weird take. You mentioned Yuri kind of coming in from the left and kind of playing midfield. I've seen a lot of people say that they want to see him in that 10. Yeah, and I don't know how well he would do. I think he would
honestly though, with what we've
got right now, I'm down to give it a go. I want to see it. I don't think he would be a traditional 10.
Yeah,
because he's just got difference, but he has that go-to. He has that creativity. He has a little bit of a difference maker than anyone else does, I think. Maybe not right now because you've got Kerwin out, you've got Brecht being in the middle because Scotty's out, so you can't really fill that wing spot. But I want to see it. I want to see what he does.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brian, specifically with I guess the best options to me are Ashley and Diani, right, in that double pivot, and then at 10, right, we're just trying Petkovic, like you guys mentioned, showed some glimpses. Yep. Okay, if he's going to show some glimpses, playing for 5 games in a row now at that position, right? Exactly. To actually get some data behind what we're seeing. Don't rotate and put Scott. Don't rotate and put Brecht. Maybe bring him in minute 60, 70 if he's not producing for you what you need from that role. But if we're going to try something, give it a go for the next 5-6 matches and see what Petkovic could provide from that role.
100%, especially since clearly you paid a transfer fee for him, so you clearly think his ceiling is very high.
Yeah.
So let's see whether or not we can actually get to that ceiling. Right?
Yeah.
The only argument I would say for not playing him at this point is if you really saw a difference maker in Brecht or Arfield because they're the veterans and they have the experience know-how or something, but that's not coming across on the field. So it's not making a difference.
And that to me is a problem. That goes back again to okay, what is the thought process behind some of these signings?
Yeah. I think the same. We'll get into it later. But yeah, I think.
But onto that Petkovic problem, you go back to does he have the endurance to do it the whole time? Yeah. Does he have the day in day out for 5 games? That you're going to do it. He should. Whether he should or shouldn't is the problem.
For his age, the transfer fee, right? But I want to see him get a run of 5 or 6 games and then us actually make a true assessment. Okay, can this guy be the plug-in for right now,
Right.
So, awesome. Let's move on a little bit to, maybe some players that haven't featured much for Charlotte this season that you guys think could improve the squad. Honestly, I think our biggest areas have been, production of goals, obviously, that Camero, maybe more production from the wingers as well. Is there a particular player that you guys see in this squad or maybe at Crown Legacy that could, come in and do something?
Well, Tiger's back, right? And you would think that he would have to be showing at least a little bit more than you would expect to be coming off of an injury, going back into Crown Legacy, and then already getting minutes with the first team. And he's coming in, and right now, why not give him some trial on that wing, especially with Carolyn out, and you've got Yuri probably going to fill that spot. You've got him; he can go either left or right side, I guess. So
okay, interesting.
Yeah, I was really surprised that. I mean, that's a clear indicator for me that he's showing something.
Right.
I was surprised to see him on the bench.
Me too,
last
actually.
Weekend. That means something has clicked. Whether Dean really likes him, whether obviously Dean really likes him, but then also just something else is clicking there to why he's got such a quick promotion after that injury. I think that's a really good shout out. I mean,
here's a name for you. Nicholas Scardina.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He is from what I've seen at Crown Legacy, he is a good player, productive on that wing. He scored already, right? Can play right back, can play right wing. And from the trainings I've gone at Charlotte, I've seen him practice that right wing position. These are positions that have not produced for us, right? So this is a guy I think Dean should give a go, at least give him 20 minutes here and there, right, to see what he can do, because our wingers aren't producing to a massive level. Obviously, it's become more difficult now with Abada for him. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Give the guy a go for 20 minutes for the next 3 games, and let's see what he can produce, right?
Put Abada on the left.
But I think his bet right now is with Tiger Smalls, like what you guys were saying.
Right. Well, Scardina was pulled up for a game.
He
didn't play, though, right?
No.
Yeah, so he was pulled up. I mean, you could put Abada on the left. I mean, Abada will tell you he can go left, right, whatever side. Whether he can or not, I don't know. But you have that option if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other real name to throw out there, and he's still not healthy yet, is, I mean, Ben Bender obviously is going to be on a lot of people's minds going forward until he actually gets some reps in. I think that's the other big name. He has got to be when it comes to injuries, just missing out on some of these opportunities, it's just got to really eat your lunch.
Honestly, it reminds me of like Chris Hagar early on where, he was playing preseason with Miguel, right? Kind of saw some glimpses in there. He gets injured, Miguel gets fired, and then, he's under a coach that doesn't really play creative players, right?
Yeah. Brandon Cambridge is another one. It's just like some of these opportunities they don't get. I mean, it's career changing in some. So you feel for some of these kids as well.
What about Nimfasha? I mean, there was so much hype going into that first game. Dean really rated him. His pressing is great, right? Yeah. Bro, we haven't even talked about him in 8 games.
So I think a part of that is that's where Dean Smith, his transparency and his willingness to kind of just tell you what's on his mind is almost maxed out. I think we're so not used to that with Latanzio, who would really keep kind of what he's thinking really behind the vest. And so with Dean, he's kind of I feel like he's really just flying from the off the cuff, and he's just kind of you know what, I'm thinking about Nimfash to start, and he's just kind of I am kind of pondering it, and he'll just kind of say that, and everybody's like, oh my God, Nimfash. Clearly but Saturdays is the day of honesty, right? Mm-hmm. He's playing him 5 minutes. Okay, so let's get for me. I don't think he was quite as close to actually starting him because clearly he would have gotten more minutes.
Dang, that's the media hype for you.
So I feel like there is Saturday is the day of really where what he's actually thinking during the midweek and pondering and what he's actually willing to do. And I think there's kind of a little bit of a difference there. Clearly, also he's been playing. I mean, he's doing well at Crown Legacy.
He's starting and playing most of the game
for sure.
Scored a goal. I mean, he missed a PK this last Sunday, but I mean, he is he's getting regular reps.
But honestly, to me, that's a good thing for him, right?
100%.
That's gonna motivate him and improve him.
Yeah,
kind of like that Ajimong miss. Unfortunately, it was with Charlotte FC.
Yep.
But you know what? Stuff like that makes good players better.
Well, and he hasn't had a bump in the road in his young career. I mean, he's still a really, really young kid. He just turned 16. But, I mean, I would say for him, it's probably been pretty smooth sailing. He's been, the best player at every level he's ever played at since he was, a little kid, right? He was getting, Bayern Munich was inviting him to camp.
Trials,
He went to, he was one of the youngest players for the U.S. youth national team at U17. Everybody's writing articles about him. He's got 2 goals during that World Cup. So, everything's kind of worked out for him throughout his entire pro career.
Yeah.
It's not always the worst thing to have a little bit of resistance and figure out how to work through that. That's pretty important. So, I mean, we can see a whole new level of him after kind of being this is what it feels like to not get picked for a while and have to work through that,
Yeah. I honestly wish we would have had another backup 9 too heading into the season. You know.
Yeah, maybe. That was actually one other name I was going to mention. Is like, I do feel like even though Ajiman split time and gotten a decent amount of reps, I do feel like at some point you have to just kind of go with him.
I agree.
Like, I don't know how, like, if that's this weekend or when, because at some point it's like, I feel like a lot of the things that Capetti is doing that we're talking about, there's like Ajiman can provide some of those things. He can hassle center backs as well.
Right.
So like,
at the end of the day, it's about the goals, bro. You know, like, it doesn't matter how great you are at creating space if you're not scoring, right? Yep. Or like crosses come in and like nobody's there to finish these chances. Yep. That should be your 9, right? And I think the problem comes with like, okay, Dean's bet was, this is my guy. This is the guy that's going to get us the goal. This is the guy that's going to be our number 9 for the season. He mentioned him. Hey, one of the things I want to improve in Enzo is getting him playing more inside the box, right? A whole bunch of heat maps that we've seen from Enzo. He's never in those goal-scoring positions.
No, he's dropped back, though. Yeah. And that could be because there's no one to fill that gap, and so he's dropping back. But with Pat, it's a little bit different because I feel like when he starts, he's not as productive as he is when he comes in off the bench. And whether you want to give the credit to Enzo for wearing everybody down or not, it could be that way. I just think Pat should. I mean, how many games did he have? 4? He came in. He had 4 starts. Yeah. So it's like you've had the kind of opportunity to prove yourself to come in and start. But
I also think he's still kind of young too. You know, so to me, he doesn't have enough reps. Like with these young players, I'm like, okay, like give him time. Like we can't. Pat can't be our savior. No. Ben Bender can't be our savior. Like, but if these are our saviors, this is a problem. They're good depth pieces that have come in and contributed, but the problem is that the main pieces aren't contributing.
No, they're not.
And so I think that's where it like also goes back to is like, okay, so at what point are you willing to just kind of see like what the ceiling is on some of these young players and just like, you know, give them the reps because the ceiling, like, to be honest, like Enzo is probably peaked. Like he peaked. They bought the peak, right? He peaked. They bought when he was in Argentina. They bought him at his like. I don't know if you get higher than leading the Argentine league in goals, right?
Yeah,
so,
true.
You know, and that's a huge ceiling. You know, if he can get anywhere near that, that would be. I mean, that's what MLS. You know, that's what Charlotte was shooting for. So, but at some point, you also got to decide like, okay, is it time to like see what Ajiman's ceiling is, or going back to Petkovic, what is his ceiling actually? Like, we rate him highly. At what point do you figure out like this is the time to kind of know what that is?
Yeah, that's the side I haven't really thought about. Was like no one's doing their job, so might as well just give them experience and see if they can do the job later.
But I mean, how much of an issue does that become where like your DP striker that you bought now isn't even considered a starter? To me, then that means if he's not going to be considered a starter, then a move has to happen in the summer, right? To kind of get rid of the guy if he's not going to be the guy that you're going to. So it's a very tricky situation where, like, this guy isn't scoring. He's doing some good things, but he's a DP at the end of the day.
But Dean said he doesn't care about that, right? I mean, he doesn't care about he doesn't care about the titles. He doesn't care about if he thinks you should be on the bench, you'll be on the bench.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and when you look at some of the other teams that have a DP that's struggling, you're looking at like New England, right? Vrioni just not really doesn't seem to be at that level. Surridge in Nashville, some of these guys just maybe doing again. They're talking about some of the little things like Surridge. I've seen Ben Wright specifically talk about some of the little things that Surridge does, but he's not producing the goals. And Nashville's like again struggling kind of in a rough spot. So you see some of these teams that have DP strikers who aren't getting the results from their DP strikers, and they're also kind of the teams that are kind of fiddling around at the bottom of the conference.
Yep. So. And they can't really say anything because they've got Honey at the 10.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Nice. Awesome. All right, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about San Diego. Are in advanced talks to sign Chucky Lozano, right? $12 million. Right off the gate, I think they have one player signed already, right?
Yeah, one young kid.
And then, I mean, just the level of impact that signing can make for you is dramatic. These are the type of things where when people say, well, Charlotte's not, the LA market, New York market, Florida. I mean, San Diego, I'm sure is a great place, but it's not LA.
It's not LA.
It's not New York.
But it's gorgeous. But it's not. But it's not one of those,
right?
Yeah.
So, if a team like this coming in to the MLS, right? You know, if a team like St. Louis can finish top of the West their first season, the conversation about, hey, Charlotte's still a young team, I am tired of hearing about that. No. We're 3 seasons in. Technically 4, because you had a whole extra year to plan the structure of this team, and it's been chaotic since the beginning.
Yep.
Right?
I think one good thing to think about with San Diego and Lozano is that he's early. So now you can have that as like a chess piece to kind of market that. Like, hey, come here because we have Lozano.
And he's
not just San Diego. And he's young.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I don't know. I saw that and, like, it ticked me off, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I mean, you can bring up the argument about California, but look, I mean,
bro,
Columbus got Cucho, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way Cucho knew where Columbus was, right?
No. That's true.
Right? So, like, I mean, some of these guys are willing to come to MLS and go kind of into random spots in the U.S. Like, it doesn't really matter. So, like, it's just, it comes down to marketing. Can you market the area to, and you can easily, I mean, you can clearly Ashley Westwood was drawn to the Charlotte area.
Yeah.
You can
what's the highest profile player that we've been linked with? Aaron Ramsey?
Yeah, I think so. That might be it.
That's the only big quote unquote name that I can think of, right?
Yeah.
Okay, first season I can kind of give you a pass because, okay, Charlotte, but second season, right? San Diego's pulling these guys. Also, you have a whole database. Look at the fan base here. Look at the crowds that Charlotte draws. Look at how enticing a city that's growing. Like, there's so much more positives as well, right? It's not like Reynoso, who's not wanting to go to Minnesota, right? But, I mean, stuff like this is like, okay, where are we lost? What is going on where we can't attract top talent? Is it that we're not going towards top talent like that? You know, because that to me is a slight problem as well, because Charlotte has talked about going into these emerging markets like Israel, like Poland, and pulling players. But if it's not working, then go to where it works.
Yeah, it seems like they're kind of taking that bet on the younger right before the prime, and they need to kind of like go a little higher, because it feels like they're taking bets on not a lot at the moment, and they need to kind of just, at least I don't think they have anyone that I've ever even known be linked to Charlotte, really, at all.
It's all right. If I see a weird last name, I'm like, all right, we're probably linked to this guy.
Yeah, and it's not even like, and it's not even like whether it's a true leak or not. Like, even a clearly untrue link, I haven't even seen a single name.
Even like a guy like Mihailovic, who we know is proven in this league. Why can't we go for a guy like him?
He went to the Rapids.
Exactly.
Of all places.
Yeah. I think y'all touched on most, just really all the key points. I think this is the downside to really focusing so much on really diversifying their portfolio in terms of, like, I mean, they've built a pretty intricate scouting network, clearly, right? They're going to Israel because they've been scouting Liel Abada for years and years, right? And then you got, like, the kid they just brought in from, the Ivory Coast, right? So, they brought in the young defender from there. Serbia, like you said, mentioned Poland, a lot of different sort of, like, under-the-radar markets is where they focused. But
when we're
you have to kind of balance between that and, like,
you got to buy bigger.
Markets.
Yeah, when it's the first season, I buy into that. Okay, cool. Now that we have data to go off of to see what you've actually produced for us, now to me that pisses me off. You know, where I'm like, okay, like, we should be able to find quality gems. We should find 4 or 5 Malandas instead of just one, if this is the trajectory and how big this network is, right?
Fair.
Because we haven't seen it. Yeah. You know, that's just the sad reality.
And then the one time they kind of got a player that was, like, peaking in their prime and kind of, like, hit the scene out of nowhere. I mean, it was Enzo Capetti, and that's, like, the one time they've really tried to sign an established guy. And so, I don't know. Yeah, it's a tricky situation because, I mean, I would say,
and we still have to see what Abada could produce, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he could be a guy, but, you know, we don't have enough data on him just yet.
No.
Although he started positively, which is a good sign.
Yeah, but he also kind of sits on an island most of the game.
Yeah, they need to find a way to get him the ball far more, because there are moments when he gets it and his dribbling and some of his skill set is just really just lightning. So it's just a matter of, can you get him enough touches? And which is, they can get Vargas enough touches. Mm-hmm. Like, Vargas gets shots, like 4, 5, 6 shots a game. So, like, at some point, you just have to switch the wings and just get the ball down the other side so you can really get Abada more involved throughout the course of the 90 minutes. Because, I mean, you have to be able to get him the touches, because if he's going to be the difference maker, the guy who, I mean, Zoran has said this multiple times, when they signed Abada, like, goals and assists, that's what he's going to bring. So if you're going to get him goals and assists, he's got to get the touches. And so you got to have your ball, the ball and the field tilt in his direction. You got to get the ball there.
All right, and then finally, let's talk a little bit about this Portland preview. Obviously, Portland, like you guys have mentioned, has been a team that's topsy-turvy, a lot of goals, like you've mentioned. They've got a guy in Evander who's, you rate him high, right? I think he's
really
got 4 goals and 3 assists, right, in 7 matches. Yeah. So, unlike us, they've got a quality producing attacking midfielder. Right. So, Brian, talk to us about a team that's coming here. To be fair, they've only won 1 away game, too, and that was against New York.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they've struggled. This should be a really exciting game. Like, there should be tons of goals.
Neville ball.
I'm excited about it. To be honest, this is one of the games I'm most looking forward to this season, specifically because of Evander. I think he is a really, really special player. I would even put him for me, top 10 player in MLS, maybe top 5. Like, I have him that high. As like, just he, for me, is a really, really special player. Really kind of like just a dribbly boy, just like real good technical, great highlight reel. I also think their U22, Santi Moreno, also got some special skills. They just signed a new record DP signing as well. Oh, no, he might not have. I think he was a record signing. Rodriguez?
I don't know if he's record, but he's
close. He's up there. If it wasn't Evander's a record, they've got 2 really high-profile transfer fee DPs in both of those guys. And so I think they just have a lot of attacking options. Defensively, obviously, been woeful. So Charlotte should be really just chomping to get after him and get some goals. So I think that for me, it's just lots of goals in this game. I see a high
both ways. If Charlotte can figure out how to produce,
if opportunities to score, right? Who do you start at the 9? Then Enzo or Pat?
I think that's a hard question because I don't really know, because I feel like Pat's quicker, right? Yeah. He's definitely, and I think that's how you're going to beat them easily, or easier, not easily, but if it's not working, bring in Enzo later, I guess. Or I don't know. I think Pat works better off the bench.
I think this is the moment you make that decision, whether it's Enzo or Pat. This is the guy that will lead us for the next 7 matches. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like we said when we were talking about May as a whole. I mean, this stretch is just where whoever you go with has to get some momentum going and has to get some goals, because I mean this is when you're looking at the opposition defense, this stretch of games is going to be just the to maximize on those goal scoring opportunities. So whoever it is, they've got to produce. If Enzo gets the starts and doesn't produce during this next stretch of games,
you sit him.
It's bad. It might be. I mean,
because now this is 2 seasons now, right?
Well, it's also like really bad defenses, and if you can't. Against these defenses, like that's a big problem. Yeah. As a DP, that's a big problem. For Pat, maybe not, because he's young. He's not a DP. He's a little bit of a different. He's learning, but like. With Enzo,
it goes back to what we mentioned, like scoring goals. Pat has found a way. Right. Enzo still has It's unfortunate that I know this man looking back is like, I should have never gave that ball to Kerwin.
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh, for sure not.
Honestly, that.
I think everyone's thinking that, not just him.
No. After that game, I was like, good for them. We won it anyways. It's fine.
I was feeling the same way.
The more time that goes on without this guy scoring, the more I think about, man, he should have really took that pen.
Yeah. I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, he got the ball taken from him a bunch last year. He's being nice. He's kind of building his karma up, right? Didn't happen.
Yeah. With that said, Brian, anything you want to add here at the end?
We just need goals, man.
Goals.
That's really what it comes down to.
All right, soccer goals. Goal. Our goals is goals.
Our goals is goals. Same.
Nice. Where can we find you at, Brian?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Bam! Mauer Media. You can also find all my written content at Topbin90.com.
Love it.
That.
Mr. XG Britton, where can we find you at?
That's it right there. XG Britton everywhere, anywhere and everywhere.
Nice. Yeah, man. I love a lot of the content that you're making, in the MLS space, so keep doing what you're doing. We really appreciate that because,
thank you.
The more we can get the league out there, the better, right?
Absolutely.
That's one of the reasons we started Top Bin, right? Because we saw there was a need in this space in Charlotte and, MLS, I think we've created a great product for people and we're going to continue to improve it. And having guys like you that help us and are on our side as well and go out there and create great content is always a plus.
Thank you.
With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching. Get